Good morning to you. Mark Sutter, HurricaneTrack.com here. Time to talk about Hurricane Dorian, a historic hurricane, the strongest hurricane ever recorded in this part of the Bahamas, setting precedents today. It is truly remarkable, but at the same time an extremely horrible situation for the people of that portion of the Bahamas. Hopefully the aid will come swift after this is over, because they are certainly going to need it. Let's start off today with a look at the satellite data here. This is from the weathernerds.org site, great satellite loop. And in this particular loop you can see the lightning. That's what the GLM flash count right there indicates, these little yellow speckles that you see from time to time. Those are lightning strikes, and you can see that the core has a tremendous amount of lightning within it. And that indicates just how much instability and absolute ferocity is happening in that core. Absolutely one of the most violent weather phenomena that you will ever see. This is like a giant tornado in terms of the damage that it is causing and will cause as it moves across Great Abaco here. And boy, I tell you what, it still looks like it's moving generally west there. Not much of a, if west is 270 degrees on a compass, that looks like it's moving, basically due west. We'll look at the information from the National Hurricane Center in just a moment in terms of the bearing. This also gives you an idea of its proximity to Florida, still far enough offshore, but our focus over the next several hours to perhaps the next day or so, as this kind of not quite crawling through this area but moving fairly slow, just total devastation in some areas. It's going to be just a horrible event. I mean, we saw what happened in Mexico Beach last year from Michael, and we look at Katrina's damage in 2005 and others. I mean, this is truly going to be a terrible situation here. And let me pull up the Hurricane Center homepage. I forgot to do that. That's okay. So here's the headline. Let me get a drink of water. I feel fine. It's just, got to get more sleep. All right. So Dorian becomes the strongest hurricane in modern records for the northwest Bahamas, the northwestern Bahamas. And if we look at the public advisor, there's a couple of things to note. First, and you know this already, hurricane watch issued for the east coast of Florida from north of Deerfield Beach to the Volusia-Brevard County line. So, the hurricane watch being issued from north of Deerfield Beach means that Fort Lauderdale, Miami, West Palm, those areas, more than likely you're not going to see hurricane conditions. And I'm almost certain as one can be, that you would not see that absolutely catastrophic core when it approaches Florida, if indeed it does so. So, Greater Miami, I think you are looking good in terms of direct, substantial impacts. You could still see tropical storm force winds and some of those bands, heavy rain, power outages, and just general squally conditions, but I think that the threat of a catastrophic event for the Greater Miami area is past. 95% sure of that am I. All right, so storm surge watch also issued from north of Deerfield Beach to the Volusia-Brevard County line, and we can see this real quick on the track map where these watches and warnings are. And just to give you an idea, you should know this if you live down there, but we'll zoom in just to orient you. Scroll down. Alright, so the hurricane watch right here to right up here. Alright, so that includes Melbourne, Palm Bay, Vero Beach, etc. But the Greater Miami area near Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, well, West Palm's in it, Palm Beach Gardens as well. But I believe with you all probably see the track there being on that southwest side, that the conditions wouldn't be as bad as when this gets closer for those of you that are on the north side, where you get that onshore flow. And you just remember, just look back to what Matthew did in October of 2016, paralleling the coast, not quite the same setup, but paralleled the coast, and it brought some pretty substantial damage, several $1 billion worth. So that's the watch warning area for the east coast of Florida. So the bearing, there it is, right there, west, 270 degrees at 7 miles per hour. So it has not slowed down much since yesterday. Yesterday it was around 9 miles per hour. But that right there, moving due west, and we can see that in the satellite imagery. I thought that's what it would be. And so it is going to move steadily, slowly though. It's not barreling in there like Andrew, 15, 17 miles per hour. So these areas in here, especially where that north wind comes in, and then you're going to have the backside on the other side here. Great Abaco is just in absolute peril. And it's going to hit pretty close to the Marsh Harbor area, it looks like, with the eye. And then the areas up here on the northern part of the island, the northwest part, devastating. Absolutely just devastating. And at least it's in the daytime. I don't know, maybe that's not even of much help. But perhaps it'll be, people can see. Sometimes you take what you can get. So that due west heading, we need to see that change, okay? If we're going to avoid direct impacts to these large population centers along the southeast coast of Florida, what I want you to watch for is that heading. Does it stay on 270? And if so, how long? Or, you know, we call it west. Look for that number to increase. If we see it decrease, 268, 265, that means that it's moving south of west, and that would be bad, because that would mean that it's got to gain that latitude back in order to avoid some of these big population centers. So we need to see how much longer it goes west, because now every mile counts for Florida. We know that it's going to be devastating in the Bahamas. I don't have anything else that I can add to that. The Michael video that we captured in Mexico Beach will be a peg down from what they are going to experience in the next little while in the Abacos, in the northwest Bahamas, etc. So if you've seen the Michael video, you know, search for it on YouTube, Hurricane Michael, HurricaneTrack, Mexico Beach, and you'll see. This will make that probably look like, oh, okay, well, I mean, it was, you know what I'm saying. This is going to be worse. Now I want to focus on you folks in Florida, where millions of people live along the coast, and they have been on edge all through here, watching and wondering and looking at the models. Even people on social media from television stations telling folks, take a pause in your hurricane prep plans. I thought that was too soon. I didn't say anything about it then. I won't call those people out personally. I just think that was not the right play. You just say, hey, look, continue along, keep an eye on things, don't panic. I wouldn't have said hit the pause button, but that's just me. I don't want you to panic. Panic's no good. That doesn't help you. Don't let the fear of this and the fear of the unknowns, the great unknown being what's going to happen to me and my property, my family, my business. Don't let the fear of the unknowns consume you. Take what we know, and that is that a good part of the coastline there is under a hurricane watch, meaning that hurricane conditions are possible within about 48 hours. That doesn't mean that this horrific nightmare of a core is forecast to pass over that location. It is still possible that the core does intersect with the Florida coast, but it's not as likely as it looked several days ago. But things have changed in the last couple of days here that it looks like it's going to become close enough that these areas through here especially, and maybe even more up the coast as well, could see hurricane conditions, a dangerous storm surge, and all the other unpleasantries that come with something like this. The wider shot, infrared, this measures the cloud top temperatures. Just what an amazing spectacle, and it's just such a shame that we are not built to withstand this. I mean, who could, right? Everything would have to be 175, 108. I don't know how you survive that. Plus the storm surge. There's only so much you can do. And we live along the coast. It's a nice lifestyle, commerce, you name it. But sometimes you have to pay the piper. And here we go. So this gives you the broader perspective. We know that the NOAA high altitude jet has been flying in the environment all around the hurricane. The Air Force and the Department of Commerce NOAA hurricane hunters fly through the hurricane in a pattern like that to sample the core and the rest of the structure. But the NOAA high altitude jet flies around all out in here, roughly, to sample the atmosphere to give the models more data, because there's not enough data over the ocean, right? And so that's been helping. And as a result, we have seen the track forecast shift. And I'm telling you, folks, every mile is going to count for the Florida East Coast here. I don't think, again, so much for Miami, probably for Fort Lauderdale. So, I mean, look, it's past y'all's latitude. It's already past your latitude, the core. It would have to be a remarkable dip. Katrina did that in 2005, but that's a different setup. You can't look at, well, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. It can help a little bit to say, well, it's possible, but I don't see it as being likely at all that Fort Lauderdale, excuse me, down to Miami, and boy, I tell you, I'll have a lot of talking to do over the next few days. Throat feels good. It's just, how it is when you talk a lot and you're not sleeping much. You guys, you just need to be ready for this. It's time to put the plans into motion. National Hurricane Center, putting it all out there for you. I do want to read the discussion here. I was just trying to think, what's my next thing I'm going to show? So let's read this real quick and dissect this. We know about the strength and the intensity. Next few days, it should experience fluctuations in intensity. We know about that. But after about 3 days, as Dorian moves northward, along or offshore of the southeast coast, the shear is forecast to increase, resulting in a more distinct gradual weakening. Now, before you get too excited about that, it's great that it should weaken, but that'll also make the wind field expand. It's difficult to explain the physics as to why that happens, but it becomes more unraveled, so you'll have a lower wind speed around the core, but the winds will spread out over a larger area, so you'll have a larger radius of hurricane force winds. So please keep that in mind. All right. Reconnaissance plane and satellite fixes indicate that Dorian, as expected, has slowed down and is moving towards the west, or 270 degrees. I already went over how important that is, at 6 knots. The steering currents are collapsing, and Dorian is expected to slow down even more, prolonging its catastrophic effects in the northwestern Bahamas. The NHC forecast calls for a slow west to west-northwest motion during the next 48 hours, with a turn to the north and an increase in forward speed as the mid-level trough along the eastern United States deepens and becomes the dominant steering feature. The current forecast is only a few miles west of the previous one, and there it is again, folks, a few miles. These miles are going to add up, and they're going to become extremely important. And is basically on top of the multi-model consensus. And this is huge right here. Both the deterministic and consensus tracks have shown the usual variability to the right or to the left, east or west of the track, from run to run. But the overall trend is for the hurricane to turn northwest offshore, but very close to the Florida Peninsula. Very close. Take that very seriously. Given the uncertainty in the track forecast and the anticipated increase in the size of the hurricane, that is what I was just talking about, a hurricane watch and storm surge watch have been issued for a portion of the East Florida coast. It is emphasized that although the official track forecast does not show landfall, users should not focus on the exact track. A small deviation right there to the left of the track, or west, could bring the intense core of the hurricane and its dangerous winds closer to or onto the coast. Period. All right, so, and we still have a while to go. Let's go back to the track map for a second and look at this in perspective. And yes, there are other systems out here, but these are of little consequence right now. Don't worry, if I was worried about them, I would tell you. So, we're talking about this approach here, 8 a.m. Tuesday. Up here is a day later. All right, today is Sunday. Sunday to Monday is 1 day. Monday to Tuesday is 2 days. Tuesday to Wednesday is 3 days. 72 hours. I just want to remind you that the 72-hour forecast for Irma back 2 years ago, when it was south and, hang on, let's get the old scroller working. When it's still well south and east, you know, wherever it was out here, the 72-hour position was basically Miami at that point. And then days 4 and 5 were, you know, whatever. But 72 hours, 3 days was here. The actual landfall was there. If you look at that, that change to the west was enough to keep the worst out of here. Of course, it went across Cuba a little bit before coming up, but it was a significant difference in terms of who saw what. You take Dorian and move it just like this with the core, that is not much at all, and that is less of a difference between Miami and Naples. And if you live down there, you know what I'm talking about. But again, I think for this to get to Miami and Fort Lauderdale in that vicinity, it would have to be an extraordinary bust. And in fact, the cone of uncertainty is almost out of that area in that close time frame. Real quick, what does that cone of uncertainty mean? That just tells us that the center of the hurricane over time has been, in terms of their statistical success, it should stay within that area roughly 2/3 of the time, something like that. So this is very unlikely to just dip southwest and be that abrupt, to lose a degree or more of latitude, 60-something miles deviation to the south. Very, very difficult to see that happen, and you know, I'd be the first to tell you if I thought it was a possibility. All right, moving along, I want to show you this tweet. This is incredible right here. This is from Dylan Frederico. He is a meteorologist, went to Mississippi State, and he was retweeting some information, or tweeting some information here from Dr. Ryan Maui and his weather model site that Maui works for. The 6Z Euro, and let me just get back on and preface this. The European model, one of the best regarded models in the world, runs 4 times a day now. The 0Z and the 12Z go out to 10 days. The 6Z and the 18Z, meaning that they were initialized at 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. respectively, go out to, I think it's about 90 hours. Okay? So that's just setting the stage for you. So what we are looking at is the 6Z simulated cloud cover here, basically. It's the model's simulation of the atmosphere, and it's hard to see what's what, but when I put this into motion, this GIF animation, it'll make sense. Alright, the center of Dorian is roughly right in here somewhere. This is Dorian over here. But when I put this loop into motion, it'll all make sense. What is it saying? 6Z Euro calls for Dorian to pass just off the Florida coast. So the 6Z Euro was closer. So if we put this into motion, you'll see how this evolves. There's the core right there. When the loop starts again, I'll try to follow it and outline it for you. Right there, there's the core, or the eye. The core surrounds the eye. That's close. I mean, come on. That is a close call. This only goes out to 90 hours. Wow. All right, so we really need to see what happens. I mean, it gets close to the Space Coast there. They could be in that western eye wall if the 6Z Euro came to pass. All right, so just wanted to point that out. Very important. And that's why, part of the reason why, the hurricane watch has gone up for this area. Okay, so the 12Z run today should have more high altitude jet data, and we'll see. Why is it trending more west? Generally speaking, the best way to describe it, there's more high pressure sitting out here. The ridge is a little bit more stout than the models thought they were, so to speak. And so it's keeping Dorian suppressed more to the south before turning north, meaning it gains more longitude or a westerly component each passing hour. The HWRF model, Hurricane Weather Research Forecast Model. This is basically you're looking at winds about 35 feet above the ground and the mean sea level pressure. This goes out 126 hours. So we can look at this. There it is passing. In fact, probably the HWRF is too far north already with the center there. Too far north, because we know that the center is about to pass over roughly right here. So it looks like the HWRF's already too far north for what it's worth, and that could be huge in terms of later on. Every mile counts. That's the hashtag. Honestly, this is so important, it's just unbelievable now. So it goes through the Northwest Bahamas in historic and very tragic fashion probably, and then watches those winds. When you start getting into those darker greens, your tropical storm force and higher, the reds are storm force, roughly 50 knots or higher, and this is 48 hours out, and you do have tropical storm conditions along the east coast of Florida, Vero Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, West Palm Beach, to the areas of east of Lake Okeechobee. And then it gets closer. There's Cape Canaveral coming into view. Hurricane conditions, Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, all the way up New Smyrna, Ormond Beach, Daytona, Jacksonville, and then a landfall from the HWRF at 81 hours out. Now, this is pretty far to the west compared to the other models, relatively speaking. It's not like it's hundreds of miles west, but it's only 81 hours out. We're not talking about 8 days out. Well, Mark, that's 8 days from now. We got plenty of time to watch. It's basically 72 hours out now, because that was initialized at 2 in the morning. So it's less than 72 hours. It's hard to think that the model is going to be that wrong. It could be, but I'm wondering if we're seeing some type of a shift overall, and this core comes dangerously close. We have to watch this very closely, and people need to be ready in a big way in Florida. That doesn't mean panic and freak out. Put your hurricane plan into motion. Evacuate if you live in an area that could have storm surge, or you just don't feel safe. Go to a friend's house, book a hotel room in Atlanta or something, and get out of the way. Inland impacts, it just depends on how close to the coast this gets. Maybe some tropical storm conditions up the central part of Florida, squally weather, heavy rain, the threat of severe weather, an isolated tornado here and there. One more piece of advice before I sign off. To really understand what's going to happen in your area, I encourage you to visit weather.gov, weather.gov, right? Go to weather.gov, put in your zip code, get rid of me, right there. I'll put mine in as an example, 28405. Wilmington, North Carolina pops up, and we could be dealing with this up here. Hurricane, tropical storm, whatever. So, you'll get all kinds of information, including these hurricane local statements that come out from the National Hurricane Center. And that's on the Hurricane Center's homepage. It's raining at my house. Lovely. Local information on Dorian, Miami, Florida, Melbourne, Florida, etc. But weather.gov, it just started pouring at my house. A sign. Weather.gov, put your zip code in, and anything in red, like a hurricane local statement or a special weather statement, read that. Very important. It'll help you with local information specific to your area. Farther north, you're like, he didn't even talk about the Carolinas. I don't know yet. Nobody knows for sure. But expect the possibility of hurricane conditions for much of the southeast United States, depending on what Dorian does. And I can't be more specific than that. Some of your meteorologists that you're going to listen to in the area, you think about Jonathan Myers down in Savannah, Dave Williams and Sonia Stevens in Charleston, Ed Piotrowski and Jamie Arnold in parts of the Grand Strand region, Florence, South Carolina, Gannon Medwick and Eric Davis up here in Wilmington, and so forth. They're going to tell you the same thing. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, and it's far enough out in time that a lot can change. But the models are starting to shift enough that it's got our attention in the Carolinas. But that's a few days out, and we will gradually bring that into frame and talk about that as needed. All right, so my plans. I'm going to leave here. Packing up in all this rain is going to be fun. Hopefully, let's look at radar scope real quick. What the heck is going on? Come on. Zoom in. Raining. All right, it's just a little passing shower. Part of that trough coming in. Weakness in the atmosphere, disturbance, setting off some showers up here. And that's what will eventually help Dorian to turn north. Interesting. Going to leave here this afternoon, 2, 3 o'clock, something like that. We're going to head down to the Palm Coast area to the hotel. It's going to be myself, Brent Lynn, and Tony Bright. These are our crew for this particular trip. We may bring in more people as time evolves. We shall see. The plan is to set up equipment, weather stations, and our unmanned cameras along the Florida East Coast. Exactly where, we don't know yet. We have some ideas. Along the way, the moment that we leave the driveway, probably before then, we will be streaming live from my vehicle. We're going to take actually 2 vehicles, my Chevy Tahoe, not the one that has all the weather equipment on it. It's a same year make and model that one of our supporters purchased for us a couple of years ago. Really not going to use it in field missions per se. It's more of an auxiliary follow-along vehicle. We're going to keep our fuel in it and some other things. But we do have another big rental SUV, also a Chevy Tahoe it turns out to be. And we're going to take this down, and I'll be streaming from my Chevy Tahoe. But whatever. Bottom line is we're going to be streaming live, and from there on out, as long as we have connectivity, that camera will be running. Where can you see it? It's going to be on YouTube for free. We do not charge money for everything. I hate having to charge or ask people to provide money for stuff, but if I don't, I can't do this. But this is one area that I am very strong in believing in. We should always make it available. Put the YouTube vehicle cam, and the camera can actually go anywhere we are, out there for free. So that's going to be on YouTube, youtube.com/HurricaneTrack. If you're watching this, you probably already know about that. It'll also be posted on our Patreon site. I will be using Patreon exclusively to post information. Most of that will be public. You do not have to be a crowdfunding supporter, i.e., put money in to get those posts. But for those who think, I want to help this guy out, I like what he's doing, Patreon is there for that. It is incredible, allowing me to aggregate everything into one particular area. Regarding our app, Hurricane Impact, first of all, don't buy it off of the stores. I haven't been able to pull it off yet. I'm working on that, so I'm just telling you right now, and I know it sounds weird, don't buy the app because it is having some problems. And I do not want you to purchase something that I am selling that I don't have confidence in. The Patreon system is working great. It gives you push notifications. I can post links in there, and it's a great platform. But our app, because of the changes that have been made over the last year in the iOS system and the Android system, it's just it works on some phones and some it doesn't. And I can't keep up with it. It's expensive. We've had people offer to help. It's a long story, but the bottom line, if you have the app already, the live camera feeds should work. And that's the most important thing for me, because that's what we do that's the most innovative and different than anybody else out there. I'm not the only person reporting information. So if that part of the app is not opening or it's not up to date, please don't freak out. it's going to be on Patreon, and you can look at that for free if you want to, or you can contribute. That's fine too, and that works for free, and they've got millions of dollars of infrastructure wrapped up into that. I do not. So I'm being very honest about it. The app is not working properly, and there's nothing I can do about it. So hopefully the live cameras will work in the app. Let me know if they are, once they are up. And there are none up right now. We don't have live cameras going all the time waiting for the hurricane. We go set them up and they run for about 3 days, just to make that clear. And then we will start focusing on what happens possibly in the Carolinas. You will be able to watch every step of the way. That's the bottom line there, okay? I'm proud of that. I really appreciate the support that we have had from people, not only recently as this storm has progressed, this hurricane, but over the last 20 years. HurricaneTrack.com is 20 years old now. That brand, you see that logo down there, it's also on my shirt. That HurricaneTrack logo, and what it means is awareness, education, dedication to pushing the science forward, and innovation. And I think we have done all of that very well. I'm the brand face of it, you know, the guy that runs it, the front man of the band, whatever you want to call it. But I've got an awesome group of people behind me, including my family, and for that I am extremely, extremely grateful. Patreon is set up to help people like me to keep going forward, but I'm going to emphasize again, I'm going to put the stuff on there. Most of it you don't have to pay for, and I love that about Patreon. What an amazing thing. All right, I got to go. I got a lot of stuff to do. You guys do your part on your end to prepare if you're in the area, and we will hope for the best for our friends down in the Bahamas. Horrible situation. We will be live within the next few hours. If you're on YouTube, you should get a notification if you've set them to notify you. I will embed the link on HurricaneTrack.com's homepage as well, in case you're like going to that webpage. All right? All right. Wish everybody luck. We're all going to need it. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I will have another video discussion late tonight. And, of course, we'll be talking with you as we travel down the road on our way to Florida. Thanks for tuning in from whatever device you're doing so from. I'll speak at you as we travel.